Welcome to our daily devotional again for this Easter week. It's good to have you here. And we want to focus today on a familiar story, the story of the woman who brought the alabaster box of precious ointment. And in doing so, we're going to look at Matthew 26 and verses 6 through 13. Now, when Jesus was in Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, there came unto him a woman having an alabaster box a very precious ointment, and poured it on his head, as he sat at meat. But when his disciples saw it, they had indignation, saying, To what purpose is this waste? For this ointment might have been sold for much and given to the poor. When Jesus understood it, he said unto them, Why trouble ye the woman? For she hath wrought a good work upon me. For ye have the poor always with you, but me ye have not always. For in that she hath poured this ointment on my body, she did it for my burial. Verily I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached in the whole world, there shall also this that this woman hath done be told for a memorial of her. And so today I want to focus on that. Of course, there's several things we could look at, but I want to especially focus on the issue that she could sense, she saw, she knew somehow more than even the disciples did about what Jesus' plans were. And you would think, well, how would this woman have come to that knowledge? And I don't have that answer, but I want us to think about that a little bit and say, Lord, help me to see what really matters. I've had trouble with some of those things through the years. Maybe some of you wouldn't even care for this um, of mine, but I, through the years, was interested in mysteries, and Sherlock Holmes was one of them. Even one that some of you might have heard of, Encyclopedia Brown. He was had books in our library about him, and they would give part of the mystery, and then you could turn to the back, see if you could figure it out yourself, and then turn to the back to find out how it was solved. But anyway, with Sherlock Holmes, it was one I would like to think I'd be good at that kind of thing. I could observe, I could pick up on stuff, and I just can't. I have people around me in a sense right now in my life that they're good at that, but I am just not. And oh well, I have to take it as it is. But Sherlock Holmes might say, "Oh, elementary, my dear Watson," but it sure wasn't elementary to me. And even to those in the story, of course, they thought he was foolish sometimes. But in this story, it seems as though they also thought that this woman was foolish, and yet she really was seeing more than they were. She was recognizing what was going on to some extent, at least. Jesus says here in verse number 12 that she did it for my burial, he says. So she apparently at least had some understanding about this. And so there's several things about this story that I just want to kind of touch on fairly quickly. But you would say, well, the disciples surely should have known. Jesus had been telling them about dying for several months anyway, and maybe 6 months. And now they are not understanding, but she is. And so you see that coming through here. And even in the midst of all of this, I mean, they're right on the cusp of the crucifixion. Robertson's word picture suggests this was maybe Tuesday evening, at least our Tuesday evening, and the way we would consider it. They had a little different way of looking at that back then, but right there toward the end of Jesus' ministry before he died, and they're still not quite getting it. But she had eyes to see. We might call that discernment, perception maybe. But I want to touch on just several things that she could discern, or she was aware of. She knew what was going on. First of all, she could see his worth. And you notice that she gave what was so valuable, the very precious ointment. And it's mentioned a little bit later on here, it could have been sold for much. I think there's another place in Scripture that tells about that it was numbers of several hundred pence maybe, and quite a lot of money that could have been sold for, but she considered him valuable. He was worth it. She also could see, secondly, the urgency of the matter. And again, I mentioned already about how Jesus said that she did it for my burial. So she was apparently recognizing that my time is short. I've got to take care of it while I have an opportunity to. And so both of those really tied together, we could maybe recognize that we need to take that same mindset. We need to give our all, recognize that he's worth everything, and then make sure we do it on time. Do it while we have an opportunity. Of course, there's a couple other things just mentioned real quickly. She was willing to sacrifice her standing for this. They maybe didn't look very kindly on her for coming in and kind of intruding into the meal there, but she was willing to sacrifice that to do what she felt she ought to. And then, of course, the last one is that she was able to succeed where others had failed. And Jesus even said in verse 13 there, he said, across the world, wherever the gospel is preached, this will be a memorial for her. And so she succeeded where others failed. And maybe we could just kind of seek a fresh glimpse of his worth and spiritual realities this week. Say, Lord, help me to see a little more clearly what really truly matters. We can get so caught up in all the other stuff going on. And yet, just now, we could say, Lord, help me to get my eyes focused on you. Help me to really see you for who you are and value you as you ought to be. Well, Lord bless you. Have a great day today, and then also we'll hope to be back with you again tomorrow.